Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Play Board Game Edition. This week we'll be playing another game that is still on Kickstarter, and will be so until August 14th, 2015. The game we'll be covering today is a worker placement whaling themed game by Dice Hate Me Games called New Bedford. Okay, to start the rules, we're going to begin with the setup. To set up the game, first take 4 bowhead whales, 9 right whales, 1 sperm whale, and 4 empty water tokens for each player. So take those numbers, multiply them by the number of players, and put that many tokens of each into a bag, preferably one you can't see through. And one will be supplied with the actual game. Also take the town board and the whaling board and all the goods and put them in the center of the table. The goods are food, which is worth $1, wood, which is also worth $1, and brick, which is worth $2. Also, gather the buildings with the number of players or less on them, and place them out into the middle of the board as well. We're going to be playing a 2-player game, so we're going to take all the +2 buildings and put them into the center of the board. If we were playing a 3-player game, we would take all the +2 buildings and all the +3+ buildings and put them into the center of the board because we have 3 players. Also, take all of the bonus buildings, and no matter how many players, and put them in the center of the board. The bonus buildings, you can tell what they are is because they have a dark gray background rather than a light gray background. There was talk about adding more buildings to the game. If that's the case, they're going to have some method of shuffling them, probably by player number, and dealing them out that way. But at this current time, they only have enough buildings for one setup. Also, each player takes $5 worth of goods. So, as I said, they could take $1 worth of food, $2 worth of wood, and 1 brick, because it's worth $2 to get 5, or any combination thereof. Lastly, each player picks a color. This player picked red, so they take the 2 red workers, the red player board, and the 2 ships that are depicted on the player board. In this case, we're going to be using an orange ship and a red ship to denote the red player's ships. They do need to be different, and I'm sure they will be in the actual game, because it matters which ship is which. And that's the setup. So next we'll move on to how to play. So the first phase is the action phase. In this phase, starting with the first player, who has the first player marker, players take turn placing workers either on the town hall board, the whaling board, or any of the buildings that have already been purchased. Any number of workers can go on any of the town board places as well as the whaling board places, but only 1 worker is allowed to be placed on each building. So, for example, if this player places their worker on the dry dock, no one else will be able to use the dry dock for the rest of the turn. But if they were to place it on the town hall, other players could use it, but they get a benefit for being the first player to place there. Now, before a player places a worker, once and only once before the action, they can spend $3 to buy either a brick, 2 wood, or 2 food. These can then be used in the completion of the action. Now, one thing that should be noted is players cannot use action spaces that they cannot actually perform. For example, let's say the red player doesn't have any wood. They would not be able to place their worker here on the shipyard because it requires wood to be able to prepare the ship. Also, using actions that on buildings you own are free, but let's say that this player over here owned the dry dock and the red player wanted to use it, they would actually have to pay the other player $1 to be able to use their dry dock. And if they cannot pay that $1, they cannot use the building. So now we have the second phase, which can be broken down into 2 steps. The first step is pretty simple. All you do is you move all boats 1 location closer to shore, like that. Then the second step happens only if there is a boat or boat in the return area. So in order from first to third, the players take turns selling the whales off their boats, buying or selling the whales off their boats. To buy a whale, we'll take these, for example, the whales on the blue boat. To buy a whale, you spend the $sign amount listed at the top left of each of the whales. So here you can see that the bowhead whale, the green whale, costs $4 to buy and is worth 2 victory points as denoted by the number in the barrel. The right whale only costs $2 to buy, but it only is worth 1 victory point. Now, selling a whale, you do similar thing. You take the value listed on the whale and you divide it by 2, and that's how much money you get for selling it. So in this instance, if I were to sell the bowhead whale, I would get half of 4, which is $2, and if I sold the right whale, I would get half of 2, which is $1. Half of 4, yeah, which 4 with the 2 is 1. Now, in this example here, the bottom player, the second player, only has $4. So they're going to spend their $4 and they're going to buy the one bowhead whale. Now, buying and selling of these whales happens at the same time for the player. So he's going to take his second bowhead whale and he's going to sell it for half of 4 for $2. He is then going to use that $2 to buy the right whale and put the right whale into his returned whales. Now, once the player whose turn it is has decided which whales he's going to buy and sell, he takes all the whales that he's selling, and players take turns going in clockwise order, and they have the chance to buy the whales for their full value. The money for selling the whale comes from the bank, and the money for buying these whales also goes back to the bank. So let's say the other player has $4, so they're going to decide they're going to buy the bowhead whale the second player sold and put it into their return whales. Now, if the first player had not bought the whale then gets removed from the game and does not go back into the bag. It is permanently removed and you'll never see it again for the rest of the game. In this instance, it helps create like a over-harvesting aspect, it seems, because while the whales go away, the water tiles go back. So it becomes harder and harder to get whales the more whale tiles get pulled. The third phase is whaling. This is where the boats that are out at sea collect whales. So you start off the phase by drawing a number of whale tokens equal to the number of boats currently on the whaling board, out on the sea in the whaling board, plus 1. So you can see we have 1, 2, 3 ships, so we're going to draw 4 tiles. So we drew 4 tiles, and we got 1 right whale, 2 right whales, and 2 sea tiles. So, starting from the farthest player out, which would be here, we have 2 people in this row, far out, and you start with the first player in the row. So the white player, the owner of the white boat, is going to decide they want 1 right whale. So they're going to take the whale and put it on their boat. Now, boats can hold any number of whales because in real life, whaling vessels can hold pretty much such a large number that essentially as for the purposes of this game, it would be unlimited. Now, the second player, the second boat is this orange one. Now, the player can either select the right whale tile, or they can choose to not take a whale. Usually, you'll take the whale, but in this instance here, the person, he has the yellow boat, and then he has the blue boat. So rather than taking the whale and putting it on his yellow boat, he's going to take it on his blue boat so that he can have it closer to sea, and because he thinks he can buy it next turn, and he wants to do that. So he's going to pass on the yellow boat, and then on the blue boat, he's going to pick up the right whale. Now, these tokens stay here till the beginning of the next phase. At the beginning of the next whaling phase, all water tiles are returned back to the bag, and any unselected whale tiles get removed from the game permanently. Also furthering along the effect of whaling, affecting the amount of whales left in the bag. The fourth and final phase is the end step. During this step, each player collects all their workers and removes them from the board and places them back on their player board. Then you move the round marker up to the next round. And the first turn marker, here denoted by the tabletop die, the table die, moves one player clockwise. And then that player begins the next round. So once you reach the end phase of the 12th round, the game ends. Before scoring, movement phases are held one after another until all boats have reached the return area and all whales have been either bought or sold. Then scoring occurs, and players get points for whales. They get 1 point for every right whale they have, 2 points for every bowhead whale they have, and 4 points for every sperm whale they have in their returned area. Also, player gets 1 point for each building they control. Then players get, which includes bonus buildings. Then on top of that, bonus buildings get the victory points that they award. And lastly, players get 1 victory point for every $5 they have. So, for example, to score this player here, they have 1, 2, 3 right whales. So that's 3 points. They have 2 bowhead whales. That's another 4 points, making 7. They have 1, 2, 3 buildings. So 7 plus 3 is 10. Plus, they get 4 points for having Roch House. So that's 14 points. And then they have $5, so they get 1 more point, which brings them up to 15 points. So this player scored 15 points during the game. And that's it. That's the entire rules. So I'll see you back at the Wall of Weaponry. Well, that's all for the rules. I hope to see you in my preview review videos as well as the playthrough video. But if not, please remember to share, like, and subscribe. And as always, remember to stay geeky.